it's all true. I've just done some research as well. The Lenny Henry Centre funded me to speak to other disabled people who'd been in the industry for a while, to talk about what the consistent barriers were. The thing that was really striking was how consistent everyone was. I spoke to, I think about 90 people did my survey, and I spoke to about 10 of them, and everyone said the same thing, which is that the attitudes of colleagues and managers is really, really key. Everyone I interviewed, with the exception of one person, said they didn't think that their employers understood the Equality Act or what the legal responsibilities were. Which is quite shocking, because if no employers understood tax law in the industry, that would be perceived as a really big problem. You know, it's nice to be nice to disabled people, but there are legal responsibilities as well. The other thing that was really obvious is that when people need adjustments in the workplace, they need to do their jobs in a slightly different way. At the moment, individual disabled people are sorting those out for themselves a lot of the time. Not all adjustments require funding, but when they do, again, the onus to sort that out is on disabled people. And employers sometimes help, broadcasters sometimes help, but there's no consistency through the industry. So you go for, if you're a freelancer, you go from job to job, and when you start a new job, you have to start a new conversation about what you need. And it's, you know, it's, at the moment, it's very much down to individual disabled people. Yeah,
and it feels like, from my experience, is that a lot of it is just done from sort of people doing goodwill and just them sort of almost doing a favour, which that's not how it should be. It's nice that they do those things, but it should be more of a structural thing. Yeah. I think, Shari, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I was also working on yet another report, we love reports, with the help of Beck2, Bournemouth University and Equity. And to be honest, our findings were pretty much echo, you know, the findings from Deb's Superior report, Kate's findings from her report. Basically, exactly what you said, like, employers just don't know what their legal obligations are under the Equality Act. And I think a huge problem with that is the nature of the television workforce. Like, as a production manager, I'm often the person who's onboarding new people, but I'm a freelancer and I've never had any proper HR training, any proper training about, like, the Equality Act or anything. It's all just stuff I've just had to learn myself. And I think that's such a huge problem with TV, because all the people in those roles tend to be freelancers, you're on short-term contracts, you're crewing up very quickly, and the production companies just aren't investing in that training and support for the people in those roles. So it's a problem for people, freelancers as employees and as in those sort of employer roles as well.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of pragmatism in terms of just like, all right, we've got to constantly sort of just go in and try and do everything, as opposed to making more accommodating, friendly sort of atmosphere within the industry. Now, my next question is to you, Stu. You recently, that's how to say it, came out? is that the best way?
That's a tongue-in-cheek way of putting it. Yeah, I said I sort of came out as disabled. First of all, I hadn't realised, frankly, that I was disabled, which is a sort of weird thing in terms of personal identity to sort of figure out. I barely heard the phrase invisible disability. When I did, I sort of looked up the Equality Act and read it, and I went, you know, bugger me sideways, I'm disabled. And that's quite a thing to realise, you know. So then I started telling people in the industry. I started speaking to commissioners and things like that. And to be honest, a few of them said, you know, well done, that's very brave. And I felt like a kid at a dentist or something for a short while. But to be honest, most of them just sort of went, yeah, all right, cool, thanks for telling me, you know. And a few people got in touch with me and said, oh, you know, thanks for sort of writing this. A few people with invisible disabilities saying that, you know, me too, I've never really sort of said anything about it. And I think, for me, if anything, the judgment that I've experienced in my career has been because I haven't been able to say that. I haven't told people that. You know, I think I sort of, I've always given off an aura of being a bit sort of, I don't know, loose or lazy or work shy. You know, I put my feet up when I'm at my desk because that's, you know, I have chronic pain basically, and so you know, occasionally I would go have a glass of wine at lunchtime to take the edge off the pain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's debatable whether that's a good way to deal with one's own pain, but the conversation for another time.
Yeah.
Or I would find somewhere to have a little nap on my lunchtime because it's exhausting being in pain all day. And I think people, you know, I think that probably contributed to the many sackings I've had in this industry. But yeah, I think actually being able to be open about that and just to tell people, and most people have been pretty cool with it. You know, I think. Yeah. It's my experience anyway. For me, I think it's pressure. I think the more brilliant people like this sort of make a noise, follow them. As someone who runs a production company, follow the money, man. You know, look at the commissioners, look at the people who run the companies. They've got to pull their finger out of their backside. Do you know what I mean? That's if they have to do it, if they're forced to do it. If a commissioner, as where you get your money as a production company, tells you you've got to do something. You've got to do it, man. Yeah, it's just whether you're a good guy or not, whether you're a woke guy or not, whether you care about disabled people. Or, I mean, hopefully you do.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I mean, hopefully you do. But even if you don't, if you're told to do something, you do it. And so that's why I think, this is brilliant. It's making a bit of noise about it, you know.
Yeah, it's just having the conversations, and that can help in a number of ways. So, you know, when it comes to invisible disabilities, or just confronting sort of structural issues that you see or problematic behaviours that you see. And I think that's the thing. What would you, from your guys' sort of perspectives and experiences, what would you change specifically? I mean, your wonderful report has got 1,000. But
well, I think first of all, I would encourage everyone to take their finger out of their backside, because I think that's not necessarily a good way to travel through the world.
No,
that's just my opinion. I think ultimately what you're looking at, you know, the way we look at it is industrial change and transforming an industry, and that requires everybody within the industry across supply chain to take responsibility and ownership for the bit of it that they can do something with. Yeah. And at the moment, you know, there are bits of it that aren't. You know, there are bits of it that are pretending it's got nothing to do with them. So the first thing is I would encourage everybody who has, you know, like everyone here and Stu, who sort of goes, this is something that's important and something we think needs looking at, to say so, and to say so publicly as much and as often as possible. Because that's the first thing, you know, build the critical mass. And then the second is hold people to account. You know, the membership of CDN, you know, are all of the broadcasters, you know, the traditional broadcasters. So, you know, Channel 4, BBC, ITV, etc., Sky. And all of them, along with PACT and the production community, you know, they are held to account. You know, we agree things and we try to deliver things. And when they are, you know, that's what the interim report was about, was, OK, you've all said you're going to do these things. Let's have a look at where you got to 18 months in. And the caveat is obviously a pandemic, but you still managed to make TV programmes during a pandemic. So what was your commitment to doubling disability, and how much of that did you carry on? So that's sort of why I'm here, really. And I quite enjoy that. I quite enjoy asking people what they did. You know, I'm not a parent in my own right, so it feels like being a parent to sometimes say, OK, so what have you done today, and checking their homework. And I quite like that. They don't, but
I would listen to you. I would listen.
They don't like that, but you know, I do it with it's a velvet glove.
Yeah, naturally. What would you guys say to people who are watching, both disabled and non-disabled, in regards to what they can do?
I think every decision that's made in the industry at every level needs to be made through a lens of disability. I think, talking about the pandemic, the first set of guidelines that came out about the pandemic didn't accommodate the needs of disabled people in any way. They were quite scary. They didn't recognise that some people work with support workers. They banned people in certain categories of vulnerability from location, which, if you're in those categories and you're a freelancer, that essentially meant you couldn't work. So those guidelines were published without any consultation of disabled people, as far as I'm aware. Having read them, I'd be very surprised if there was significant input. So everything at every point needs to be discussed with disabled people, and the impact on disabled people needs to be considered. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just can't be an afterthought. You need to be thinking about it the whole way through your production process, like when you're recruiting people, when you're budgeting it, when you're scheduling it, like the whole way through. So often I work in productions where it's just you know, they've cast it, they've found all these people, and then they're like, oh, quick, have we asked if they need anything? And it's like, that's too late.
Yeah.
That's just too late, you know? You can't then be crowbarring it in. And then that does feed this attitude that I think a lot of people have who are non-disabled, where they feel like it's this imposition, this extra step that you have to go to. And actually, if you were shifting your mindset and thinking about it from the very, very beginning, you wouldn't, you know, you factored it in the whole way through. It's not this extra kick, bollock, scramble at the end. And then you just wouldn't...
No swearing.
Too late. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I feel quite strongly about is the basic thing everyone can do is talk to their teams. It's not necessarily obvious that people are disabled. When somebody new starts, ask them what they need. Ask them if they how they want to work.
The fear.
And
Like,
Yeah.
just grow up a bit.
And-
You know what I mean? It's
And when I spoke to other disabled people as part of my research, everyone said, again, it was very consistent. One of the best experience they'd had is when a manager, when they started, just said, what do you need? How can I do? I don't want to get in the way, but tell me what you need. If it's nothing, fine, leave them alone. They'll get on with it. But just talk to people. Don't ignore it. If a disabled person doesn't need something, they will tell you.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
I think there can be a fear of offence, and you know what? Sometimes you will offend someone. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, maybe you'll ask an inappropriate question, and maybe someone will do a tweet thread about you. But you know what? Grow up, deal with it. You know what I mean? Like is that the worst thing you've got to go through? A bit of a fear of offending someone? Just deal with it, press on, and you know. And frankly, I think we'd rather you know, hit the numbers whilst saying the occasional unintentional offensive thing than just sort of hid and didn't hire any disabled people, but never offended anybody. You know, like.